The headline is simple enough. The BBC has alerted the Metropolitan Police to fresh allegations around Strictly Come Dancing, after earlier claims 2 stars used cocaine. External lawyers were already probing the matter. Now the police are aware, and the new series is due to launch on Saturday, the 20th of September. What should worry us is not only the behaviour in a dressing room, but the behaviour of an entire media ecosystem that feeds on scandal as if it were oxygen. Reports say that the BBC referred new information to the police after an external investigation was set up, with prior allegations surfacing via a legal submission linked to former contestant Wyn Evans. Last year's review of backstage culture upheld some bullying and harassment complaints and led to welfare changes, including chaperones present at all times during training, and names are notably absent in the current probe for legal reasons, and rightly so. Strictly has not existed in a vacuum. Allegations about Giovanni Pernice and the departure of Graziano Di Prima following misconduct claims and disciplinary action for Jamie Boothwick created a rolling narrative of dysfunction. Everywhere. Even when the BBC contested elements, it apologised to Amanda Abbington for failings and toughened welfare protocols. The point is not to rehearse a charge sheet, but to ask why this keeps happening and why it's amplified so ferociously. The BBC has occasionally behaved like a cathedral in a secular age, venerable, necessary, yet slow to grasp how power imbalances on shiny floors can curdle into coercive training regimes, laddish off-camera cultures, and excessive after-show partying. When a format becomes a national ritual, managers can confuse popularity with invulnerability. And the introduction of chaperones and welfare producers in 2024 was tacit recognition that the old trust the talent model no longer suffices. It was a late but real course correction. Your newsagents around the corner, when I've got a newsagent around my corner, you've probably got one around your corner. I'd like to ask you, do they still sell newspapers? Because mine has stopped. Print is no longer a going commodity. It's in a long decline, and the remaining outlets compete for ever spikier attention. Reuters Institute reports a failing engagement and trust in legacy news. But and Ofcom's 2025 data shows the gravitational pull of online video has grown again. It keeps growing. In the UK, YouTube has edged ahead of ITV on share of viewing, with broadcasters losing daily minutes, year on year. An economy that rewards outrage will naturally feast on BBC scandals, especially those involving a cherished family brand, because it's iconoclastic. And the problem is that the mainstream media, things like television and cinema, these have not responded to the challenge of online media, to the challenge of the computer generation, to the what's this called, mobile phone stuff. Cinema. Every so often I think, I'll go to the cinema. Cinema is such an effort now. UK cinema screens are fewer than in 2019, and independents are under pressure. Yet there's a counterculture. Under 35s are propping up an indie revival and turning up for repertory screenings. The paradox is instructive. People do not hate long-form screens. They hate being hectored and rushed. Give them something purposeful and they will sit together in the dark with delight. But it has to be with purpose. And the problem with the cinema is that whole palaver of going in for a stated time and the popcorn and the and all the booking the seat stuff. It's just an effort. There used to be a time when you go to the cinema, get your ticket and go straight in and the film would start. In other countries, by the way, you go in, it's exactly that. You go in, you get your ticket, you go to your seat, the film starts, and then it stops halfway through, and then you get some adverts, and you can go off for a little break, or you can go to get an ice cream or something. There's even people coming down the aisles with ice creams. That's charming. But instead we have to sit through all this rubbish at the beginning of a film, so that actually by the time a film starts, I just want to go to sleep. So, is this... another instructive thing is when television started, cinema was worried that it was going to be overwhelmed by television, so it produced CinemaScope, VistaVision, and these other wonderful things. So cinema became a treat. Cinema became a big event. And cinema has not responded to this generation at all, and nor has television. Instead, what's happened is it's tried to outdo it by doing quicker edits, which is not surprising given the fact that a lot of people who've worked in advertising and therefore worked in this sort of thing are now making big cinema films. Well, a quick edit in a CinemaScope screen is exhausting. It makes me feel nauseous. I've just this morning I was watching a little bit of the last Bond film, and there's so much quick editing going on that actually an hour in I realised I had no idea what was going on. No idea at all. And I remember watching the film in the cinema and thinking, I don't know what's happening. And I'm not sure at what point that film lost me. But I've given it a second go and it's lost me again. And if cinema can't tell a story, then of course it's going to get eclipsed by the punchy stories which are told on social media, the punchy stories which are perhaps told on television, but the punchy stories which are told on screened things like Netflix. But I don't want my media to be squashed into the size of a mobile phone. I don't want my media to be squashed into the size of a television screen, or indeed even into a computer screen. I want to be able to go to something big, but increasingly I can't. If I go to my local cinema, I've got the choice of sort of 10 different screens, and they're all terribly small. I might as well sit in my home. There's when it comes to the BBC, why is it not making any effort to deal with this? Well, and why is it being attacked so vigorously, so much? So every other day there's a BBC story, there's a BBC scandal. And is this overconfidence on the part of the BBC, or is it sabotage by others? Well, there is BBC complacency, confusing protocols with culture, failing to police celebrity exceptionalism until it spills into the tabloids. There's also media incentive to humiliate the BBC because scandal sells and the BBC is the tallest poppy. Commercial rivals, print titles fighting for relevance, and outrage-driven broadcasters all benefit when Auntie looks irresponsible. The result is a feedback loop in which a real problem becomes a perpetual crisis. But what would a grown-up crisis, what would a grown-up response to this look like for Strictly and beyond? Well, first of all, I think we could put out six points. First, codified red lines with due process. Publish an explicit conduct code for talent and crew on all entertainment shows. Include alcohol and drug policies, training room standards, and a clear escalation path. Commission a standing independent safeguarding panel with the power to halt rehearsals. Report anonymised breaches annually. And the BBC began this journey with chaperones. Now it needs measurable transparency. Secondly, it needs to stop outsourcing culture. When indies make the show, the BBC still owns the duty of care. Insert contractual welfare clauses with inspection rights, surprise audits, and named responsible officers who are judged on safeguarding as much as ratings. It's not good enough for the BBC to come in right at the last minute and then start adding its stamp of approval, which is, frankly, I've worked on some of these shows. I know what happens. That's what happens at the moment. It needs to change. It needs to be all the way through. And thirdly, slow TV is not cowardice. Restrict the instinct to imitate social video. Add programming that prizes steadiness and craft. More live music with long takes. More arts and theatre recordings that let the camera breathe. Few hyperactive studio games pretending to be cinema or pretending to be computer games or something. Ofcom's figures show people still clock hours on broadcaster TV. They're not allergic to television, only to jitter. And fourthly, We need to announce a public covenant for big brands like Strictly. Welfare first, spectacle second. If a series must pause to fix standards, then pause. And the short-term hit is cheaper than reputational rot. And so MasterChef should go, at least for a few years. So should Strictly, possibly. Are we saying the BBC and programme makers have got no other ideas? Well, that may be true. But maybe they should sit down and get some other ideas. We need to have a healthier scandal metabolism. When allegations surface, we need to respond in days, not months. We need to confirm the process, name the independent lead, set a timetable, promise a published summary, avoid the legally safe yet infuriating line of no comment, while the tabloids define the story from other sources. And we need to reinvest in the communal experience. We need to partner with independent cinemas for Strictly specials. Perhaps we need to have live finals or behind-the-scenes documentaries screened locally. If younger audiences are rediscovering the cinema as a phone-free refuge, meet them with elegance rather than strobe-lit panic. We need to engage with all forms of media. At the moment, we seem to be selecting one form of media and then sticking to that and worrying why that then dies suddenly because of overkill. The current police involvement is at an early stage, so no arrests have been announced, no people have been named. Precision matters, especially when legal thresholds and careers are at stake. We can criticise a culture without convicting individuals in the court of clicks. And at the same time, I think we would be right to mourn the loss of the unhurried glow of television and the grandeur of cinema, and indeed the joy of the printed page. The answer is not to shrink each of these spaces into phone-shaped content. It's to define them on their own terms, slower, more careful, more adult. If Strictly wants to keep its ballroom magic, it must accept that glamour without guardianship is simply risk and sequins. And if the wider press wants an audience that trusts it, we must stop treating the BBC as a daily chew toy and start reporting with proportion. The scandal is real, so the incentives, so are the incentives that make it raw. And the only cure is to put standards back in charge of pace and culture back in charge of format. Only then will the ballroom feel like the ballroom, not with a nightclub with cameras, or not with some sort of what is it? What are the things that a boxing ring with voyeurs. We need to have a more mature television. We need to have a more mature cinema and a more mature printed exchange. We need our media to move into the 21st century, to stop competing against each other and recognise that it is all part of this exciting communication.